Today, if you spend decades mastering a complex field, the expected next step is obvious. You broadcast it. You publish your findings, take the podium, and leverage that knowledge into status, a following, and financial security. The idea of acquiring a lifetime of elite knowledge and then intentionally burying it in the dirt makes absolutely no sense. Yet, in 9th century Baghdad, that is exactly the path chosen by a man named Bishr ibn al-Hath, known as al-Hafi. He was a peerless intellectual living in the intellectual capital of the world. Bishr traveled extensively to study under the absolute titans of his era, legendary scholars like Malik, Fudayl bin Iyad, and Ibn al-Mubarak. By the standards of his day, he had built the ultimate academic resume. He possessed everything required to command immense fame and a massive following of his own. This exemplifies the dense Arabic manuscripts Ish produced, where every line represents grueling hours of travel, memorization, and transcription. Yet, instead of teaching, he buried 18 heavy baskets of meticulously collected hadith texts. This marked an absolute withdrawal. He completely refused to transmit his knowledge. The scholars of his day famously remarked that if you divided Bishr's intellect among the entire population of Baghdad, the whole city would become wise. Why would a man with that level of brilliance actively silence himself? Bishr's silence wasn't a rejection of the material itself, but a concern for what the podium did to the man standing behind it. He began to see teaching and academic fame as mechanisms that fed the human ego rather than the soul. He was obsessed with the concept of khuyula, arrogance. He confessed to his peers that merely reciting his prestigious chains of transmission infected his heart with pride. The feeling of being the authority in the room was, to him, a spiritual poison. He developed a radical philosophy regarding the Zakat, or purifying tax, of knowledge. He argued that just as physical wealth must be taxed, intellectual wealth requires its own sacrifice, and the only way to tax your own brilliance is by withholding it from public praise. When pressed on why he stopped his life's work, he laid out a personal rule of self-denial. I desire to narrate, and if I desire something, I leave it. For Bishr, possessing academic brilliance was a liability. He believed that the more an audience cheered for a scholar, the more that scholar risked trading his sincerity for the approval of his students. His intellectual fasting was mirrored by a grueling physical reality. He stripped away every comfort, pushing his body to the same extreme limits as his mind. He refused all patronage, gifts, or easy academic stipends. To survive, he spent his days hand-making spindles and selling yarn for pennies in the market. He once admitted to a friend, "I have desired roasted meat for 40 years, but I haven't had a pure durum for it." He denied himself a single good meal for 4 decades because he could never completely guarantee the money used to buy it was entirely untainted by corruption. His protests against state power were severe. While staying in the city of Abadan, he resorted to drinking raw, damaging seawater. He chose to harm his own health rather than take a single sip from the public wells, simply because those wells were funded by the Sultan. This severe physical deprivation was a calculated effort to remove every hook society used to pull a person into its compromises. By wanting nothing from the world, he ensured the world had no power over him. As he grew older, Bishr retreated even further into the margins of society, going to extreme lengths to hide his piety from the public eye. But total isolation is nearly impossible. One afternoon, an acquaintance secretly followed Bishr, slipping quietly behind him. He watched the scholar enter a solitary tent and perform an incredibly intense weeping prayer. Listening closely, the man heard the exact words of Bishr's secret plea. "O Allah, you know that humiliation is dearer to me than honor. You know that poverty is dearer to me than wealth." He was actively begging for absolute obscurity. Overcome by the beauty of the prayer, the man accidentally sobbed aloud. Realizing he had been watched, Bishr was filled with agonizing regret. He turned and said, "O Allah, you know that if I knew this man was here, I would not have spoken." Bishr spent his life fleeing from a reputation that chased him until the end. When he died, the crowds at his funeral were so massive they blocked the streets of Baghdad. Giants like Ahmad bin Hanbal openly declared that he had left the world without an equal. We live in a culture built on the constant broadcasting of every thought and deed for validation. Bishr's life leaves us with a single, uncomfortable thought. If the audience disappeared, would the virtue remain?